Well, welcome everyone to our seminar. Today is going to be all about strategies for getting into a business school and also about getting an awesome GMAT score. My name is Sergey, and I'm very pleased to be joined today by Teresa Perez from the Smith School of Business at Queen's University, who's going to begin by sharing with you a few amazing strategies about how you can prepare your application, how you can make the best decision, how you can make the most out of the MBA experience. So please help me welcome Teresa.
Thank you so much, Sergey. I am so happy to be here and thrilled to be able to share some information about the Smith Full-Time MBA program with you all, as well as what is the most important aspect in terms of your quantitative skill sets, which is the GMAT or the GRE. So this is why we're here today, to share insights into what it is that you need to do to prepare a really strong application for a top MBA program. So we are situated on the territory of the Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee territory. We're grateful to be able to live, learn, and play on these lands. So it is my pleasure to start with that land acknowledgement and also continue with sharing with you a little bit more about the Full-Time MBA program, which starts in January each year. This is a program that has one intake, January to December, 1-year format, and we are still recruiting for our January intake. Just a few more spots left for international candidates. Unfortunately, you'd have to look at our next intake. Our program does begin in January, and so we want to ensure you have enough time for study permits and financing, etc. And so therefore, we do advise that international students apply before September in any given year. So I am here joined by Sergey Kuk, who is the senior trainer admissions coach, who's going to share further insights into how to beat the GMAT. But before we do so, I'm going to let you know that our program is based in Kingston, Ontario. We are fully residential, so it's great news to share that our students are back in class, and we do anticipate a full residential model for January. So January program will be in person, as I said, and it is a program that sees about 85 to 90 students year over year. Kingston is where the program is based. This is a program that is very much in a university town. Kingston has been ranked #1 for best quality of life. It's also a very dynamic city. It is a relatively small city, but in between two large cities, an hour and a half to Ottawa, 3.5 hours to Montreal, and 2.5 hours to Toronto, which is a major city for our alumni post-MBA. We do also see candidates from across the globe, from all areas, which is fantastic to see so much diversity, not just within the full-time MBA program, but also in the Queen's University campus and within other faculties as well. This is, as I've mentioned, a 12-month MBA program. This is a program that has one intake in January of approximately 85 to 90 students, as already mentioned. Our students are based in a very collaborative environment. So Goods Hall is where the full-time MBA program is based. I am virtually sitting in the atrium of Goods Hall, as you can see behind me. This is where our students learn, where they collaborate with their team members, as well as where they attend classes. So all students are in class together during 8:30 to 4:30, Monday to Friday in the front end of the program, so January to June. And then the last 6 months is your electives, where you have a lot more diversity in terms of the courses that you'd be taking. All students have access to a team room, and so that is where you and your 6 other teammates will collaborate and complete your team deliverables during the first 6 months of the MBA. The class size typically between 85 and 90, as mentioned. This year the class is 88. We see a very strong percentage of women year over year, which is attributed to our amazing alumni that have come before these women, but also to the great partnerships we have with the Forte Foundation, as well as the Women of Influence, among others. The average age generally sits at 27, average years of experience between 4 to 5 years year over year. And again, as mentioned, lots of diversity in terms of where our students come from academically and professionally. One of the one of the areas that you should be considering when you're looking at an MBA, of course, is the methodology, the pedagogy overall of an MBA. We merge both the technical expertise and the interpersonal skills to ensure that you are the best leader coming out of this MBA program. We have opportunities in experiential learning, real-world business projects, of course, living cases and case-based methodology, which is implemented in all MBA programs. But we don't feel like that is the only way to learn. And so this is why we have a blended methodology to ensure that you're getting practical skill sets that employers are seeking today. We do also have exchange partners. So these are a list of just a few. This is a fantastic opportunity for you if you're looking to get global exposure, go abroad and do some of your electives. You can go as short as 2 weeks or as long as 4 months. So again, great opportunity if you are looking to go abroad and gain international exposure and experience. These exchange options typically happen in the last 6 months, or you can extend your MBA by 4 months by doing it the following January to April timeframe before you graduate in May. And then also what you should be considering when you're looking at an MBA is your return on investment. So you want to make sure you're doing your due diligence, looking at the job acquisition statistics of the MBAs you're interested in, but also looking at some of the companies that the schools are partnered with. We have extensive partnerships from across Canada, particularly in areas such as consulting, finance, technology, healthcare. Keep in mind that it is important to seek out strong partnerships like AdmitMaster to ensure you have a strong GMAT, because some companies do ask for the GMAT scores, such as management consulting or finance organizations. So this is something that you do want to consider. And again, do your due diligence, make sure that you're lining up all of the right resources and skills necessary to be a really strong candidate for a top MBA program, but also to be a strong candidate for the types of jobs you're looking to place in post-MBA. So it's, again, as mentioned, consulting and finance do tend to be the top industries year over year, but that's not to say that there's not opportunities to place in other industries. Of course, there are. We have extensive partnerships. As already mentioned, we have a team of relationship managers that work with corporate Canada to ensure that we're building out those relationships for our students in the areas, spaces that they want to move into. And it's also important to note that you don't have to have previous experience in that space to be able to pivot or transition. I have a quote here from Andrew Liu, who was a football player prior to coming into the MBA program and made a pivot into management consulting and is now at BCG, Boston Consulting Group. So it's important to note that you want to choose a program that's going to give you the right resources, tools, but also have the right partnerships and support in our career services to get you to that end goal. So very happy to report our class of 2021 that just graduated in May. We're at 98% 3 months after graduation, the highest in Canada, and a very solid total compensation coming out of the program as well. So we host over 100 events year over year. We have amazing partnerships. And as you can see here, a very strong base salary delta as well coming out of the MBA. So a very strong return on your investment. So just to close out, I'll go through the financing. We are at $83,100 for domestic students and $102,100 for international students. This is an all-inclusive fee. All of your cases, tuitions, textbooks, and materials are included. We also do offer an opportunity for you to take the GMAT while you're in the program. So if you decided that you want to increase your score, we do work exclusively with AdmitMaster to offer that training while you're in the MBA as well. But ideally, in an effort to secure scholarships, you want to have your GMAT prior to completing your application. So we do not have a fee to apply. It is free to apply to the MBA program. So you can start your application at any point in time. And you don't need to have a GMAT to start an application, but ideally you have it to close out so that we can assess you holistically based on merit on everything that you're providing us, including a GMAT score. So we do partner with Forte Fellow to offer fellowships for women exclusively in our applying to our MBA. We also do partner with RBC as our preferred lender, and then we do have international loan options through Empower Financing. 70% of our students receive a scholarship, and it generally ranges at the low end about $5,000 right up to $60,000. And we do still have some of those significant scholarships available for candidates looking to join us in January. So it's still not too late. Just to close out, we are a 12-month program, as mentioned. We begin in January each year. We have 39% females. We'd love to see that over 40% for our next intake. You are required to have a GMAT or a GRE. Again, as mentioned, very strong acquisition employment statistics post MBA. And then you also have a free application rolling admission process as well with the Smith School of Business. You can contact me at any point in time. Join me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect. I'm always here to help answer any questions, to advise and guide you, but also to connect you with an application advisor who can get the process started. So I'm now going to turn it over to Sergey to walk you through the GMAT prep and how you can get the best score possible to not only get admittance, but also a scholarship. Over to you, Sergey.
Thank you so much, Teresa. And thanks again so much for joining us today. I know that everybody on this meeting really appreciates the tips. I always appreciate the tips. I've heard you speak a lot, and every time I would learn something new. So again, thanks so much for joining. And if anybody has any questions, you can put them in the Q&A box. Teresa might stay for just a few minutes, and then I know she has to go to another meeting. But you are stuck with me for the next 45 minutes or so, and I really want to make sure that I give you some strategies to help you understand how you can get that 700 plus score on the GMAT. So what we're going to do is I actually wanted to show you a question. And I'll show you a question and a couple of ways of looking at this question. Hopefully, this is going to shed some light into how you can actually approach the GMAT, and most importantly, what is it going to take to get a good GMAT score. So let's take a look at this question. This is a typical question that appeared in one of the past exams. So here's what the question says. The ratio of pigs to chickens on a certain farm is 13 to 28. When 15 pigs were added to the farm, the ratio of pigs to chickens became 4 to 7. And the question is, what was the original total number of pigs and chickens on this farm? Wow, looks a little overwhelming, but this is a multiple choice exam, so let's keep going. These are the 5 answer choices, and of course, one of them is correct and 4 of them are not. So how do most people approach this question? This is something we have perhaps done back in our high school. Here's what we usually have done. Let's call this the theory or the book way or the high school way. I like to call it the work hard way. We all hard workers. We love to work hard, right? Don't we? So here's how we can work very hard to get this question correct. Now we are given the ratio, and the ratio of 13 to 28 is what's called, it is presented in what's called the most reduced form. So what this means is that in order to calculate the actuals, we need to have a multiplier, and a multiplier, let's call it n. So we don't really have 13 pigs and 28 chickens. We have 13 times n pigs and 28 times n chickens. And if we add 15 pigs, so now we have 13n plus 15 pigs. Now we can calculate the new ratio, which is 13n plus 15, which is the total number of pigs, to 28n, which is the total number of chickens. The new ratio is 4/7. So now all we need to do is solve for n. This is a linear equation with one unknown. So after about, depending on your level of comfort, 1 to 3 to 5 minutes, you're probably going to be able to calculate n. N is equal to 5. Plug it back to calculate the number of pigs, the number of chickens, add them up, and bingo, you have an answer. We worked really hard, we got an answer, and we have succeeded after about 3 minutes or so. Hopefully, we didn't make any mistakes. Now, I don't know about you, but I like to work smart. Working hard sometimes is important, but if you're trying to get into a business school, you got to be a little smarter. And you really have to learn as a future manager how to work smarter as opposed to just simply harder. That's what really makes a difference between somebody who's going to be a successful manager and successful leader and simply somebody who is working every day, kind of 9 to 5 normal jobs. So let's look at the new way of approaching this question. Let's call it the work smart way. I also like to call it the mastery way, because this is something you have to master, and it takes some time, and you got to go through certain specific steps to actually get trained and get comfortable to approach the questions this way. So here's what we learned from the question. For every 13 pigs, we have 28 chickens. because the ratio is 13 to 28. What this means is that if we have 13 pigs, we would have 28 chickens. And if we have 13 more pigs, we're going to have 28 more chickens. And if we add 13 more pigs, we need to add 28 more chickens. So what this actually means is that the number of pigs must be divisible by 13. And the number of chickens must be divisible by 28. And every time we have 13 more pigs, we would have 28 more chickens, and therefore 41 more animals, because 13 plus 28 is 41. So what this actually means, without really doing any complicated math, is that the number of animals, the total number of animals on the farm, must be divisible by 41 before we added these 15 pigs. Now, the question was about the original total number of pigs and chickens. So let me ask you a question. If we know the number has to be divisible by 41, how many answer choices are actually divisible by 41? I think it's very easy to see that there's only one of them, because the answer choices are pretty close. So only one of them could be divisible by 41. And of course, it's even easier to see that the number 205 is divisible by 41, because 4 times 5 is 200 and 5 times 1 is 205. And we've done this literally within 30 seconds without breaking a sweat, without working hard, and without doing much math. That also means that the chance of us to have made some mistake is very close to 0. So hopefully this demonstrated to you a little bit what you're up against and what you're actually getting yourself into when it comes to the GMAT. This is a different way of thinking. This is a different way of approaching the questions. The GMAT is an advanced exam. It's not about being good in math. It's not about just graduating with straight A's from high school. What it's really about, and let me give you a quote from the GMAT, the people who actually make the test, is it's really all about you being able to demonstrate what the GMAT calls higher order reasoning skills. So if you can think about this, almost every other test that you've ever done was a test that was testing your knowledge of some sort of a subject matter. If you're trying to get, let's say, into some sort of a history program, and let's say you need to take a history exam, well, then, of course, you need to know some history. So you memorize some history, you go for the exam, and you get a good mark because you know history really well. Well, the GMAT is different. You do not need to know any business, even though you're trying to get into a business school. And for that matter, the GMAT can give you a passage about farms, and you don't need to know anything about farms or raising chickens. You just have to really know how to think differently, how to think on a different level, how to really think like a manager. We call it here at AdmitMaster thinking like a CEO. That's the ultimate dream job of almost anybody who gets into a business school. So wouldn't it be nice to start learning these skills and these strategies and these ways of thinking right now? That's what's going to help you get into a business school. Now, of course, you do need to have some basic understanding of geometry, algebra, statistics, and the English language. Fairly basic. Now, most of it is not even from high school. If you've heard that the GMAT is testing math from high school, well, most of it isn't even from high school. Most of it is from the middle school, grades 5 to 8, the majority of the topics. Because this is not what the GMAT's about, right? And I hope you can see this by now. The GMAT is really about your ability to think outside the box. Now, how do you think outside the box? How do you learn how to think outside the box? And we'll get to this in a few moments, but really the idea is to start expanding your box. And that's why when you come to our class, we're going to teach you strategies that initially, and this could be strategy just like this, initially might be a little uncomfortable for some people. And what I've seen is that when we show this strategy, some of the people are going to go back and just say, I understand this. I understand the number has to be divisible by 41, but I got to go back and solve this problem, or I got to go back and do this equation from start to finish just to be sure that this is really what's happening. And that is why preparing for the GMAT will even require getting a little outside of your comfort zone and doing things that perhaps you haven't done before. Now, the reason why we've done so many times certain specific things in preparing for the exams is that we've been trained in high school or in the middle school and basically throughout our educational career that knowledge is power. I don't know about you, but I've heard this many, many times from my teachers who told me that if I learn something, when I grow up, I'll be very successful and very powerful because I learned this chemistry formula or that, biology concept. And I love analogies. So I'm going to give you an analogy. And this is actually a very good analogy. And hopefully it's going to help you understand again how to structure your studies. And I'll give you some ideas and tips on how to do that as well. But you can think of the GMAT as a sport. It's a sport for your brain. And our brain is a human organ, just like your arms and your legs and everything else. So when you are preparing for the GMAT, you're essentially taking your brain to the gym, to a training session. And ultimately, you got to show up for that competition where you have to complete a series of challenges, a series of exercises within a limited time, and you got to succeed and beat other people who are also doing this test, because this is a bell curved exam. So it only matters how well you do compared to other people. That's why all of these scores that you've seen, well, these are the scores that, again, are important in relation to how other people do. Right? If you get a score of 600, but everybody else gets 590, that's an amazing score. But if you get a score of 600 and everybody else gets a 610, then you're at the bottom. And as you probably know, and I think you can really see this clearly by now, that when you're preparing for a sport, simply reading a book about that sport is not going to be enough, right? And I'm sure that Michael Phelps didn't maybe necessarily read a book on how to swim. Maybe he did, maybe he didn't. But he's the best in the world because he took the time to train. He got a coach and he was practicing all the time. He got better and better and better, and that's how he succeeded. So if you've heard of any people scoring very highly on the GMAT, let's say 800, very, very few people every year. There's probably like a couple dozen people who get the scores of 800 out of everybody worldwide who takes this test. And if you actually look through who gets 800, you would notice almost everyone is a GMAT instructor. Why is that the case? Are the GMAT instructors smarter than other people? Not necessarily. I can tell you from maybe speaking about me, I don't consider myself extremely smart, but I've done this many, many times. And that's why I could be better than most other people on the GMAT. And that's exactly what's happening in almost any sport. So it really takes the time. It really requires that time investment to learn the strategies, show up for training sessions, do the homework, do the exercises, and that's how you can get a good score. It's not just going to be reading a book. I was actually talking to a client of ours who is going to start our course in January. I was speaking with her yesterday, and she was saying that she's gone through one of the online self-preparation programs, and she said, I've taken literally 3 notebooks of notes, 3 thick notebooks. As I was going through this, took her 3 months. She said, now I have 3 very thick notebooks, and I don't really know what to do with them. This is all really useful information, but how do I actually apply it? So that's why simply reading, simply taking notes isn't enough. It's important to actually do it. Now, speaking again about doing it, if you look at the structure of the test, you would notice that there are 4 sections on the test. And most people, when they're being asked about the sections on the test, they're going to say, oh, there is a math section and there's an English section, right? And I usually just pull up the names of the section and say, can you please tell me where do you see the word math or where do you see the word English? It's not there. Because that creates our own impression that this is all about math or this is all about knowing English, but it's not. Now, this chart was shown to me by people who make the test, the GMAT. We get invited every year to meet the GMAT, the people who actually make the questions and make the test. Every year, I'm one of the people, a very small group of people who go to the headquarters of the GMAT in Reston, Virginia, and we just get to socialize and spend the day with these people. I'm really privileged. You can't really book your ticket. You really have to be invited to this event. And this is one of the charts that was shown to us. And the people who make the test, they said, well, look, really, most people misunderstand that the most important words here are the words analytical and the words reasoning. And yes, there's a section that's called quantitative reasoning. That means there's going to be some math involved. And there's a section that's called verbal reasoning. That means there's not going to be any numbers involved. So it's really all about just learning how to think. Now, the quantitative reason and the verbal reason sections are also the only two sections that actually contribute towards your total score, 200 to 800. The analytical writing assessment and the integrated reasoning are the sections that are shorter. They still score, the business schools still want to see your score, but these two sections do not contribute towards your total score. And now if you look deeper into the quantitative reasoning and the verbal reasoning sections, you would actually notice that there are different types of questions. The question we've just done is actually called a problem-solving question. And that is perhaps why a lot of people, when they approach this question, they're trying to solve a problem. Whereas the trick here, and this is really a little bit of a mind shift, is that instead of solving a problem, our job is to find the right answer. And isn't that exactly what we've done? We said the answer has to be divisible by 41. Now, of course, there are a million numbers or billions or an unlimited number of numbers that are divisible by 41 in the universe, but I'm not concerned with all of the numbers divisible by 41. I got 5 answer choices. Only one of them is correct. And that's what I'm going to be looking for. That's why my job is to find the right answer, not necessarily solve a problem. The verbal reasoning section is a section that is concerned with your understanding of the structures of the English language, all the way from understanding the structure of a sentence to understanding the structure of a long passage. Now, if you have not seen a lot of these questions, and even if you have, and perhaps you are struggling with them a bit, then I'd like to invite you to come and join us at the free refresher classes. Every month, we would offer one math refresher class and one verbal refresher class, where you could actually get to learn some of these strategies, as much as we can do in 2 hours. So these are short 2-hour classes. And you could see when the next class is at admitmaster.com. We actually have a class tonight, depending on when you're watching this. If you're watching the recording afterwards, it might not be tonight anymore, of course, but if you can go on admitmaster.com, you are going to see a list of all of the upcoming classes. You can click and you can sign up for them, and these classes are free. This is really an amazing way to get introduced to some of these strategies, and we are going to dig a little bit deeper into how to structure your studies, because these classes are a little bit longer. Today's class is just an hour, and these classes are going to be 2 hours long, 2 hours of math, 2 hours of verbal. So really highly encourage you to come. They're free. Now, both the quantitative and the verbal reasoning sections are fairly difficult. They're challenging. You got about 30, 31 actually on quant and 36 on verbal questions, and about an hour to deal with these questions. So very fast paced. You got about 2 minutes per question, less on verbal. And the most important thing is that these sections are actually computer adaptive. Now, what this means is that they adapt to your performance. That means if you're doing well, the sections are going to get, or the questions are going to get harder. And if you're doing poorly, the questions are going to get easier. And I don't know about you, but I've had some exams during my university years where I knew there were certain concepts that are a little bit easier to understand and certain concepts that are a lot harder. I remember a particle physics class. Now, some of these things were easy, and some of these things were honestly so hard to understand that I couldn't even comprehend them. So I was hoping to get an easy question on the exam, because that's how I can get a reasonably good mark. Now, on the GMAT, that's not going to work. On the GMAT, if you want to get a good score, you will have to deal with hard questions, because the exam will very quickly figure out that you can handle hard questions, and it's going to keep pushing your limit. So you got to not only be prepared to deal with hard questions, but you also need to have the right psychology to not get afraid, not get flustered, just keep going with the questions. Don't waste too much time, and really just keep moving and do the best that you possibly can, knowing the strategies that you have. And some of these strategies we're going to teach you in our GMAT Mastery program are the strategies that get you to the right answer about 80 or 90% of the time. Now, some of the people might say, well, I don't know, I don't feel comfortable using the strategy that gets me 80% of the time. But guess what? The alternative strategy may be using order of algebra. And even though it might get you to an answer 100% of the time, if you make no mistakes, it will take you 10 minutes. So I'd much rather take an 80% chance of getting the questions right in a minute and a half than 100% of getting the question right, assuming I make no mistakes, in 10 minutes, because this is the exam. I gotta win the exam. I cannot win every individual question. I got to make sure I pace myself properly and take my chances when needed and do the right amount of work when needed, because my goal is not to win a question. My goal is to get a good score. And that's very, very important. So when you're preparing for the test, some of the things that we do in a class is not just to show you a strategy, but it's also about really get you prepared for this experience, which is going to be for most people one of the most stressful exam experience that you've ever done in your life. Unless you've taken other exams that are similar to this, like LSAT or MCAT or like a bar exam. But the majority of the other exams are not like that, because the majority of the other exams are not adaptive, and they're certainly not as tricky. So then the question becomes, well, how do I prepare for this test? One of the most common questions that I get asked when I do a lot of one-on-one consultations, and by the way, if you're interested in having a one-on-one consultation with me or with one of our instructors, please go on our website, admitmaster.com. These consultations are free, and we can help you understand what it's going to take to actually get into your dream business school. We can look through your resume and help you build a proper study plan for preparing for the GMAT. So this is the question I get asked a lot, is what is the best resource for me to prepare for the GMAT? Now, let me tell you something important, and that is there are lots of resources out there. And these resources are good for their specific purposes. But many of these resources are not going to work for you necessarily, because these resources are designed because for certain people with certain backgrounds, with certain time commitments, and so on. So it's really important that when you're preparing, you choose the right resource. Because I know for many of you, when you're thinking of getting into a business school, time is money. You know, you want to get that GMAT score out of the way as quickly as possible, perhaps because you want to start your MBA. Or maybe even if you are thinking of starting your MBA later, you got to work on your career. Maybe you got to take some other courses. There's certainly, we only have 24 hours in a day, so we got to make sure you use your time wisely, because this is the most valuable resource that we humans have, is our time. So that's why it's important that you pick the resource that will help you get to your goal, and whatever goal you need, as quickly and as efficiently as possible. So let me share with you what are the resources that you could use, and perhaps I could begin by sharing my own personal story and what's the resource that I've used, and maybe that's something you can relate to, and perhaps that is something that you can adopt as well. So here's what I've done. When I realized that I need to do the GMAT for the application to my business school, the first thing that I've done is I pulled up a practice test, and I sat down for 3.5 hours, and I actually did the test start to finish. I would very highly recommend that you do that. And I know some people are saying, well, I haven't been studying yet. Doesn't matter. In fact, when you begin studying, depending on the resources that you're going to use, you're probably initially going to be very confused about all kinds of different strategies that are coming your way. So it's always good to take that benchmark, that baseline, and just take a practice test. We have a free practice test on our website, admitmaster.com. You can just go and fill out your information. You're going to get a link to this practice test, and you can take it within the next 7 days. So it's a very easy way for you to try it out. It doesn't cost you anything. You just invest in your time, and it's going to be the time very well invested. So I've taken this practice test, and I got a score, and my score was 650. I honestly didn't know what to expect. I just knew the score is 200 to 800. I had no idea what I would get. That's why I took this practice test. Now, once I got the 650, I realized I'm not that far from my goal. That was number one. And number two, most importantly, I understood what would I need to work on in order to get a higher score. Now, for me specifically, what I needed to work on is that many of the terms that were used on the GMAT, I did not necessarily know. Like, for example, I did not know what does it mean an isosceles triangle, because I learned math in a different language. So I've never seen the word isosceles triangle. So what I did is I went back and I reviewed some of the theory. I reviewed the questions that I've done. I looked up the words that I didn't know. I brushed up on my theory, on my terms, and I also understood the structure of the test and the different things that may come up my way on the test. So that review took me about a week. And a week later, I thought that it would be a good idea to take the next practice test. At that time, when I did my GMAT, which was more than 10 years ago, there weren't a lot of practice tests available. Actually, there were only 2 practice tests available. So I took the next practice test. I got a score of 700. And at that point, I felt a lot more comfortable. So I realized that it's probably time for me to book my real test. So I did. I booked my real test. A slot was available a week later. So I booked the test for the following weekend. And I got a score of 750. Now, the whole process from start to finish took me 2 weeks. And here's my official score report. I'm showing this to you not to impress you. It impresses me, honestly, every time I look at it, that I was able to get that score of 750 in just, wow, geez, 2 weeks. And the proctors told me, wow, that's really amazing. You got the score. How long have you been studying? I'm like, 2 weeks. I'm like, ah, you must be a genius, right? And I said, well, no, I'm not. Now, some people tell me I am, but I can tell you a big secret. I am not. The reason why I got such a high score is that it actually took me years to learn these strategies. So I knew what to do when you have the ratio of 13 to 28. I didn't have to learn this strategy. I just had to learn a little bit about the GMAT. But I didn't have to learn how to do these things. I didn't have to learn how to solve quadratic equations using the reverse FOIL method. I didn't need to learn all of that stuff. I already knew that. And once I actually did really well on the GMAT, once several years later, I became a GMAT instructor. It also took me years to learn how to teach these strategies, right? I knew how to do that myself, but I needed to learn how to teach other people. And I got pretty good at what I do. And that's, if you look at the reviews or some of the testimonials that we hear from students, and I work with people who I consider a lot smarter than me. I'm just a pretty face, who taught me a lot of strategies as well. So what actually happened is, why did I do so well? And really, it's none of my kind of, I would say, it's not something that I necessarily did, but I got really lucky. I got really lucky in school, in my middle school, in my high school. I had amazing teachers who were really caring and who taught me things that normally you wouldn't learn in a high school. This was my math teacher who taught me all of these kind of out of the box thinking. It was really expanding a lot of the visions for his children in school. And as a result, many of us went and competed in different mathematics Olympiads, and we did really well on the regional and the national level. And it was really a lot of his accomplishment. He taught us this. And then as a result, I get very fortunate. And later on, the work that I'm doing right now is really my tribute to people who taught me, because now we pass along a lot of the knowledge and a lot of the skills and a lot of the strategies. And again, I continue to learn from my teachers, my current teachers, and most of them are just some amazing GMAT instructors who've been teaching with us. One of our GMAT instructors has been teaching the GMAT since 1998. You know, if you can imagine, that's longer than most of you were probably alive. He started teaching before most people were born, who are now thinking of doing an MBA. It's a very, very long track of expertise. And that actually translates into the fact that the most important thing is that these strategies could be learned. It doesn't really matter what your background is. Some of you might be lucky in school and you might feel like, yeah, I can do the same thing. I can go and take a practice test and get a 650 and then a week later 700. Totally can do this because I got lucky in school. But some of you didn't, and that's completely okay. It's never too late to learn these strategies. We hear a lot from our students that they're saying they really wished that they've learned this before. One of my students about 6 or 7 years ago came to me and said, look, Sergey, I really hope that by the time I have kids, you open an Adbit Master Kindergarten, because I'm really hoping that these strategies could be taught to children from a very, very young age. Also, a lot of our clients are saying that this course that they've taken with us, the GMAT Mastery course, is the best course they've ever taken in their life, because they really now start seeing things and being more comfortable with the things they've been so afraid about. some of these math terms, some of these verbal strategies. Now they can actually do this. Now they are empowered to actually very passionate about teaching the GMAT, and I'm probably half of what most of our instructors are doing as well. So here's an example, by the way. Here's Daria. She took a class with my colleague Tristan. It was amazing. He's teaching a lot of our now virtual classes. And Daria came to us about a year ago with a diagnostic score of 380. Now, 380 is not a very good score, just to give you an idea. Most people would get very discouraged, but she was actually motivated to study. And she said, I need to work smart because my application deadlines are coming up. And she had about 5 months to prepare for the GMAT because she wanted to submit her application to London Business School. So she worked very, very dedicated for 3 months. And in 3 months, she was able to get to a score of 700. Now, here's something really important that I wanted you to pay attention to. In her comments, she said that she learned how to think outside the box when approaching difficult questions. She learned how to manage time and stress, and she learned how to think like a CEO. Now, these are her words. And this is what she thought was the most important thing, or were the most important things to help her get a score of 700. And that's why when you're really thinking about studying for the test, it's not just going to be about learning the formula. It's going to be about developing these skills. And you can totally do this. And Daria, since then, she already recommended several of her friends, and they're all doing really well. One of her friends is now scoring in the range of 730 on a practice test and just been studying with us for about the past 3 months. So you can totally do this, regardless of the background. You just got to get the right training, the right people on your side. So how do you actually navigate this GMAT prep? I'm going to use an analogy, another analogy, and then you can decide what works better for you. Now, the analogy I'm going to use is the analogy of a corn maze. Now, you may remember maybe sometime back when you were a child, maybe your parents or your friends or your siblings took you to a corn maze. And you walk in and you don't really see the exit. And you gotta somehow make it to the exit. So you try different things. You try to go left, you try to go right. Sometimes you hit a dead end, you turn around and you keep going. And the goal would be for you to figure out how to get to the exit before darkness, because you definitely don't want to get lost in a corn maze when it's getting dark, right? So we call this the trial and error approach, because you try something, if it doesn't work, you try something else. You turn around, go the other way. That's how a lot of people approach the GMAT. Now, by the way, the trial and error approach is a great approach if you're trying to do something that has never been done before. For example, if you are trying to invent a light bulb and you're Thomas Edison, you gotta try it 10,000 times just because nobody has done it before, so nobody knows how to do it. You gotta try, and there were other people who are trying this as well, and they were not successful, and Thomas Edison eventually was very successful because he actually was trying until it worked, but it took many years, and many other people were not successful. So it works really well if we're trying to do something that has never been done before, but on the GMAT, many people in the past have done the exam. Millions of people have done the exam. It's a standardized exam, so it is pretty predictable. It's a very unusual exam. It's a tricky exam, and most people don't know how to do it. But because it's predictable, because it's standardized, and because so many people have done it before, it's possible to learn how to do it. You don't have to do it through trial and error. Now, why do most people actually use the trial and error approach? This is, by the way, the most common approach. You just try. When I speak with people who've been studying for the GMAT, here's what they usually do. They usually say, I got some sort of a book, or maybe a set of books, maybe these books, because they're official GMAT guide, so there's got to be the best. And there's an online software, and there's the app, and I tried a few things, and I tried questions from this book, and I went through all of these questions, and I got some other books. And I just trying. I'm watching a few YouTube videos. Now, by the way, these books are amazing. But one thing we need to realize that these books are question banks. So these are essentially the official GMAT guides, are the books that give us access to past questions from past exams. None of these questions will appear on your exam, but these are the kinds of questions that are going to appear. Now, the book, unfortunately, does not teach us how to do the questions. And one of the things we tell to all of our students is try to resist the temptation of reading the explanations in the book, because the explanations are very confusing and they're probably going to confuse you even more than the question itself. So at this point, when people are trying these questions, let me try the questions. Let me see how it works. And by the way, trying is good. Like I mentioned, trying a first practice test is amazing. And that's definitely something I would recommend. So after trying a lot of questions, they're saying, wow, but I need to learn some strategies. I cannot do this. What the book tells me is solving this equation on 2 pages of formulas. I need to get some strategies. And then a lot of people are going to go and buy some strategy books. And there are lots of them. All kinds of different books that are all written by different test prep organizations as essentially supplements to the course. So the idea is, if you're buying a book written by any test prep organization, and I'm not going to name the names, but I'm sure you know who they are. I've shown you some of them. The idea is you're going to be reading this book that's going to give you a little bit of an insight, and then you come to a class, and the instructor teaches you the real strategies. So that's the goal. That's why there's a little bit of an inherent conflict of interest built in there. But most importantly, all of these strategies are only useful if we know how to apply them. And also, usually the book is not going to tell you what's really important. It's just going to give us a lot of the strategies. So we have to figure out, well, what do I focus on? I can take 3 pages of notes or 3 notebooks of notes, but then which one do I really use? So that is why we call this a trial and error approach. That's why a lot of people do this, just because we've been conditioned to study with books. We just read books, take notes, right? Isn't that what we've been doing for pretty much all of our exams? And that is why I want to show you a little graph. And that, when I saw this graph for the first time, I was honestly shocked. So let's go with the shocking graph. So here's what this graph shows. And this is the graph that, again, was shared with us by the people who make the test, by the GMAT. Every year, 7 million people would be exploring GMAT prep. So what this means is that these are the people who would be going to these websites like gmat.com, mba.com, and we'll be doing research. We'll be exploring, we'll be figuring out what would it actually take for me to do well on the GMAT. Now, out of these 7 million people, of course, not everybody will be following through. 2 million people will register on the website and will either buy a GMAT book or download the GMAT practice test. 2 million people a year. Well, guess how many of these 2 million people actually end up doing the real test? Only 200,000 people. So 1 in 10 people will do the real test, and 9 in 10 will get a book, will get a practice test, will try out a few things, and will say, trial and error, it doesn't work for me. And then of the 200,000 people that actually do the test, only approximately 12%, so about 24,000 people, and that means 1 in 300 people relative to who started exploring the GMAT will actually end up with a score of 700 or more. And the 700 is the score that most people would want to get, because that's a score that will help you, A, get into your dream business school, B, usually get a scholarship, and C, get you to qualify to work in this very competitive industry such as consulting and investment banking, because these companies such as the McKinseys and the Goldman Sachs, they will actually ask you, what is your GMAT score? And that's why Smith will sometimes offer you to improve your GMAT score if you got in with a 650, but you need a 700, and that's why you're going to come and hopefully study with us. Now, because the chances of success are so low, 1 in 300, some lotteries provide a better chance. How can we improve our chances? How can we beat the trial and error pattern? Well, one of the easiest ways to do this is to simply get a map. Now, imagine walking into a corn maze and actually having a map of the corn maze. Wouldn't this give you a lot more chance of getting to the other side before darkness? Now, sometimes you take a detour because you don't necessarily know exactly where you are and you can't really ask any questions. So sometimes you got to try a few things. So it certainly still takes time, but doesn't take nearly as long as not having a map. So on the GMAT, having a map would be something like having a well-structured study plan. And a lot of the good self-study programs will offer this to you. Now, most of the books won't necessarily, because they just will break things down by chapter and just say, go through each chapter. But a lot of the good self-study programs will offer that. So we offer, for example, here at Admit Master, a couple of self-study programs. One of them, we call it the GMAT Express, which comes with no instructor support, but it does have access to all of our resources. And you can get it for as little as 1 month and as long as 1 year. And you're going to have the exact step-by-step process you're going to follow, all of the preparation work you need to do, all of the videos you need to watch. The videos are interactive, so you're not just watching. We want to make sure you're actually following it. So you're going to have to answer some questions as you go along, and you're going to be able to proceed as you're answering the questions correctly. We want to make sure you're really getting it. And then you're also going to have homework. So we'll assign a lot of questions so you get to practice what you've learned. And also you need to make sure that you get a certain passing grade, because that's how you're really getting better and better. But you're following it primarily on your own. Now, this is what works for a lot of people, especially when they have a lot of time and they're on a strict budget. But there is a better way of studying. And the better way is to walk into the corn maze with somebody who is very experienced. Somebody who knows exactly when to turn, exactly what to do first, second, and third. And that's what usually gets you the best results. Now, of course, you have to compare the cost of working with somebody with the possible return on investment. But if you've done any sort of a research, and if you are located in North America, then for you, you'll probably realize the cost of this investment compared to the amount of time you're going to save is going to be literally a no-brainer. Now, let me give you another quote. This is a person who was in a class actually with Daria. Her name is Darini, and she was applying to also one of the top schools, in the world. And the interesting thing about Darini is she's been trying to study for about 4 years. She said she got all the books. She's been pulling them from the shelf, trying a few questions, reading the explanation, got overwhelmed, put the books back on the shelf where they belonged. And really, she was almost ready to give up on her MBA dreams. And then a friend recommended that she joins our class. Now, she, just like Daria, actually, it was so funny. They were in the same class, and they did the test almost on the same day. They are though in different cities. Daria was in Toronto. Darini was from Montreal. And they got a score of 700, the same score almost on the same day. And for Darini, really the game changer, and that's what she told us, and we kept in touch, of course, even before and even now as she started her program. See, guys, I just want to tell you, the most valuable thing for me was having the structure, because every day I knew exactly what to do. So I was actually looking forward to my studies. I was no longer overwhelmed. I knew that I needed to do a certain specific thing on a certain specific day, and that's what helped me move closer and closer to my goal. She actually gave herself 6 months to prepare for the GMAT. She ended up getting a score of 700 in just 3 months, and then we helped her with the application process as well. And she is now in her dream school, and she's absolutely happy. So if you are the kind of person who is saying, look, this is really important to me. The MBA is really important because I feel like I have a lot to give to this world. I feel like I'm a future leader. I feel like I'm the kind of person who's going to succeed in the business school, and I'm the go-getter. If you are this kind of a person, then we would love for you to come and join us in our class. For us, the reputation is very important. So we want to have good, committed people in our class, because then we'll invest a lot of resources, a lot of time in helping you succeed. And we know you are going to succeed. Now, the way our program works is that it's a 6 or 12-week program. So you're taking either 1 or 2 classes per week. And it's about 60 hours a week in a class over this time. So a lot of class hours. If you compare our course with some of the other courses that are offered by other test prep companies, you would notice that they're usually a lot shorter in terms of the contact hours, because that's really what, for most of the test prep companies, this is kind of the most expensive part of delivering the course. So we don't want to take any shortcuts. We know it's really, really important. And that's why we're going to give you lots of time in class. You're going to have coaching outside of a class. We'll give you all the books that you need, all the practice tests, all the resources. We'll even let you repeat the courses for free for 1 year, because we know that sometimes you need a refresher, and sometimes life gets in the way, and maybe we had some people who had a kid unexpectedly earlier than they were supposed to, and that's why they had to pause the course and pick up maybe a month later. So we are very flexible, because for us it's really important that you succeed. Our program, it costs about the same as everywhere else, maybe a little bit below market average, because we do a lot of these webinars. We work with a lot of schools, we get a lot of referrals, from clients from different business schools, and that is why we can really offer this program to you at a reasonable cost that is going to provide an amazing value for you. We don't spend lots of your money on marketing. We spend your money to really develop an amazing service and a great course for you. Our next course starts next week. So if you're watching this now live or in the recording, just check our website, and you can go directly to this page, admitmaster.com/offer. So this way you can see the latest offers, and they usually are going to be better than on the main page, because there's some additional discounts that we're going to offer to you, just as a bonus of you watching all the way till the end. Now, if you look again on our website, on this page, you would notice that there's 3 options to prepare. Now, there's a live course, which we just talked about. And again, there are some special discounts on this live course. They do expire, so you got to really keep an eye on the timeline. And they do expire per course. So there could be an offer on a specific course, and as we're getting closer to the start of the course, that offer is going to expire and it's not going to be brought back. So if you're interested in starting a specific date, and I'd just like to encourage you to book a seat in advance, because when you do, we are going to give you resources to begin preparing, and that's going to be very important. There's also a couple of self-study options. The one in the middle, GMAT Mastery On Demand, is the option which is a little bit of a hybrid. You have all the support from the instructor. You got 3 private classes. You got lots of support, ongoing support, and you have access to recorded classes as opposed to live classes. And the GMAT Express is something where we give you our resources and you study completely on your own. So there are no paper books, there's no instructor support out there, but you got a lot of really amazing resources. That's why it's a lot more affordable. And you got to go through these on your own and really just keep track of your own work. Now, we do keep track of the success of our students. We pride ourselves to teaching you the skills as opposed to the theory, and we know this works because approximately 1/3 of our students will get scores of 700 or more, and the average score that our students achieve on the GMAT is 670. So that's an amazing score. Now, some people are asking, well, okay, so 670, that's an average. Well, what score will I get? Well, I get 670. I understand half the people get above and half of the people get below that. That's why it's an average score. So it's important to understand that the average score is just an average, but the score you will get really depends on what score you need to get. Let me give you a couple of examples. Fionn came to our class and said, I'd love to get a good score. I don't have a lot of time to study. So I appreciate that you're giving me access to a lot of these resources for a year, and I can even come back to a class and get this support. So it took her probably about 7 or 8 months. She started not from a very high score. And just to help you understand, Fionn's a nurse. She works in the emergency room. So she had to make arrangements to attend our classes. But after that, she said, I'm just going to continue doing homework when I can. And I'm going to keep doing it until I get a good score. Now, she called me several months later and said, Sergey, I just got a score of 760. What can I do with this amazing score? Right? And Fionn was introduced to our class by her friend, who actually went to Smith, did it amazing, got a job in a consulting firm, and 2 years later got recruited by a private equity firm. And I think Fionn's going to do extremely well in the school as well. When she actually starts her MBA, she was planning to do her GMAT a little bit in advance. So she had a lot of time and she was super committed, and this is important. Now, another example is, here's Brian. So Brian was also super committed, but not having a lot of time. He just said, look, I'm starting a new job in 2 months. And I literally just have 2 months to prepare for the GMAT. I'm going to be so busy. He was starting his new job in Google in California. But I can't do this. 2 months is all I got. So he was studying 35, 40 hours a week. We gave him the right plan. And that's why everybody's different, right? When you come to a class, you're going to have your own personal plan. It's going to be the same classes you're going to attend, but the plan is going to be different. So Brian was able to achieve a score of 760 in just literally 6 weeks. He took a course in January. He did his test 4 days after he finished the course. He was able to get a score of 760, and he also got into his dream school. So the message here is that whatever score you need, this is a score you're going to get if you're committed and you have the right plan. Now, some people come to us and say, I need 650. In fact, maybe I need 600, but it'd be nice to get a 650 for a scholarship. Now, of course, we wouldn't expect these people to get a 760 because it will require a lot more work on their side. So if all you need is 650, that's okay, we can help you. But if you come back to us and say, look, you know what, I changed my mind, I need a 760, that's totally okay. It happens all the time, by the way. And a lot of our students will end up going to much better schools and getting much better scholarships than they initially projected. And that's why if you go on our website, you look on Google and you see some of the reviews, you would notice that there are a lot of very positive reviews. And the idea is really not just for you to have an amazing experience in a class. We work really hard for you to have that, because then you're going to actually enjoy coming to classes. And that's really important. But also the idea would be for you to get your goals, to get to the score that you really need, and ultimately help you get into your dream business school. So ladies and gentlemen, if you are the person who really wants to succeed in life, in that career of a manager, as a leader, as maybe a future CEO, and if you've identified that the business school is what you would need to get there, then I'd like to invite you to commit to this journey and don't give up on your dreams, and come and join us. You can check out the schedule of our classes. Now, at the moment, we offer live virtual classes. We teach them from our classroom, but because of the pandemic, we still cannot have students in our classroom. So you'll be logging in from home, but you'll be actually seeing a classroom. And the instructor is teaching a class, so it feels like you're in the real class and you see other people in the class, and it's actually a lot of fun and super convenient. And we also offer these refresher classes. The next class is tonight. You can check our website, admitmaster.com, to see when is the next schedule, and please sign up. It is a free class. You're gonna have a lot of fun, and we're gonna go deeper and we do more than what we've done today. I would also like to encourage you to take a practice test. You can take a practice test at trygmat.com. So it's very simple. Just go to trygmat.com. You're going to see a page. You just fill out your information. You're going to get a link to a completely free practice test, and you can try it out, what it's actually like to do the GMAT, and you'll see your score. And you are going to see all of these things at admitmaster.com/offer. So I'd like to encourage you, if you're ready now, just go there and sign up for all of these classes. And if you are thinking of doing this at some time in the future, then just make sure you bookmark this page, because this is where we are going to have the latest and greatest offers and the different events and the schedules that you can check out. Now, most importantly, if you are considering joining our virtual class or our in-person class that's hopefully going to restart in about 5-6 months, then I'd like to encourage you to book your seat early, for a couple of reasons. Reason number one is that there are going to be discounts on the courses further in the future. We call them the early bird discount. So the earlier you sign up, the better is going to be the rate for you to take the class. That's reason number one. Reason number two is we are actually going to give you resources to begin preparing for the GMAT. So as soon as you sign up, you are going to get access to these resources, and you don't even have to pay the full amount up front. We just ask for a deposit. And we're going to give you access to all of these resources so that you can actually begin studying right away. And these are going to be important things that you can do on your own. So we'll give you some refresher exercises where essentially you're just remembering what you've learned in school, just getting more and more comfortable with the basic concept, more and more comfortable with the idea of an adaptive test, of doing things on time. There's certain things that take time, and these are the sorts of things and skills that we want you to begin working on right away. And of course, when you come to the class, we're going to dig a lot deeper. We're going to teach you the strategies that are literally going to blow your mind. And even after the first class, you'll say, wow, now I can feel that I can really do the test. Now I can feel that I can really get a good score. And now I actually see how I'm going to get to my goals. One of the most common comments that I hear from the students who just signed up for our course, when we call them just to talk about their study plan and to make sure they have all the right resources and have everything for them to get started, everybody says, I'm actually so excited. I'm finally starting this journey, and I know it's going to get me to where I need to be. So I hope to have this discussion with you, ladies and gentlemen, soon. If you have any questions, please put them in the chat box or in the Q&A box. I'm going to be happy to answer them. I'm actually going to go ahead and stop the recording right now. So if you have any questions, I'll stick around and I'll answer them for you. But if you're watching this afterwards, if you think of any questions afterwards, then just go on our website, admitmaster.com. There's a button to book your one-on-one consultation, or you can just simply fill out the contact us form. Or if you're watching this live, then I'm going to send you a personal email later today or tomorrow, and you can just respond back to me, and we can chat about your personal circumstances. So thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you soon.